Look at the person sitting next to you, your father, your husband, your brother. Now, imagine them looking you dead in the eye and selling you to a stranger. You didn't commit a crime. Your city wasn't conquered by a foreign army. You are being dragged away into brutal, backbreaking slavery for one simple, terrifying reason. Your family had a bad harvest, and they need to pay off a loan. Welcome to Babylon, 1750 BC. Under the famous Code of Hammurabi, there was no such thing as bankruptcy. If a man ran out of silver, his flesh, or the flesh of his children, became the currency. Today, if you default on a massive debt, the worst thing that happens is your credit score drops. Maybe the bank takes your car, but in ancient Mesopotamia, you lost your humanity. You were branded like cattle. You were forced to haul mud and stone under a 115-degree sun to pay off a debt you didn't even create. But the physical torture wasn't the real nightmare. The true horror of being a debt slave was a twisted legal loophole, a specific law that was officially designed to free you, but in reality, became a ticking clock that guaranteed you would be worked to death in exactly 36 months. Let's look at the brutal mathematics of ancient debt and why it absolutely sucked. How does a free human being become a piece of property overnight? It all comes down to dirt, water, and math. In ancient Mesopotamia, there were no safety nets, no government bailouts. Your entire existence depended on the unpredictable moods of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. If the river flooded too much, your barley drowned. If it didn't flood enough, your crops baked into worthless dust. To survive a bad year, a farmer had to borrow silver or grain from a wealthy merchant. But the interest rates in Babylon were legally sanctioned loan sharking, often hitting 20% to 33% a year. It was a mathematical trap designed to fail. When the debt came due and the farmer had nothing left to give, the merchant didn't just walk away. We are taught in school that the Code of Hammurabi was the dawn of justice. An eye for an eye. But we conveniently skip over law number 117. Law 117 explicitly stated that a man who could not pay his debts could legally hand over his wife, his son, or his daughter to his creditor. Think about the psychological horror of that moment. You weren't captured by a ruthless enemy army. You weren't kidnapped by bandits. You were sold by your own father or your own husband. The person who was supposed to protect you looked at a ledger of owed silver, looked at you, and decided that your freedom was the price of his survival. You were ripped from your bed, forced to leave your siblings behind, and dragged to the estate of a stranger. You weren't a person anymore. You were a living, breathing interest payment, but the paperwork was just the beginning. Before the merchant put you to work in the scorching quarries, he had to make sure everyone in the city knew exactly what you were. He had to mark his property. And in Babylon, the way they branded a debt slave was a humiliation you couldn't hide, even if you tried. When you arrive at the merchant's estate, the first thing they take isn't your labor. It's your identity. To ensure you can't just blend into the crowd and run away, you are given the abutum, the mark of the slave. Depending on your master, this could mean having half your head violently shaved in a distinct, humiliating pattern. Or worse, it meant a brand or a tattoo burned into your flesh. If a barber ever helped you hide or cut off your abutum, the Code of Hammurabi demanded that the barber's hands be chopped off. You are marked forever. A walking billboard of your family's financial failure. Now that you look like property, you are put to work like an animal. If you were a man, you were sent to the brickyards or the canals. Imagine standing knee-deep in toxic, stagnant river mud under a blistering 115-degree sun. You are digging heavy clay, mixing it with straw, and packing it into wooden molds for 14 hours a day. Your back is covered in second-degree sunburns. Your hands are raw, blistered, and infected from the filthy water. You aren't building a home for yourself. You are building the massive walls and ziggurats of Babylon, brick by agonizing brick. If you were a woman, your hell was indoors. You were assigned to the saddle querns to grind barley. It sounds easy until you actually do it. You're forced to kneel on a hard stone floor for 12 hours straight, pushing a heavy grinding stone back and forth. The grit gets into your lungs. The stone wears away the skin on your hands until they bleed directly into the flour. Over the months, your knees develop massive, painful calluses, and the constant repetitive motion physically deforms your spine and shoulders. Archaeologists today can literally identify the skeletons of ancient female slaves just by looking at their crushed knee joints and warped spines. You are starving, exhausted, and broken. But every drop of sweat, every drop of blood that hits the mud or the grinding stone doesn't even pay off your father's debt. It just pays the interest. You are a machine made of meat, and your body is slowly failing. But the physical agony of the brickyards and the grinding stones is nothing compared to the psychological torture of where you are doing this. Because unlike prisoners of war who were dragged to foreign lands, you are trapped in a completely different kind of hell. You are a slave in your own hometown. If you are a prisoner of war captured by the Romans or the Egyptians, you are dragged hundreds of miles away. You never see your home again. It is a tragedy, but there is a strange mercy in the distance. As a Babylonian debt slave, you are denied that mercy. Your hell is local. You are hauling 60 pounds of wet clay through the same markets where you used to buy bread as a free citizen. You walk past the tavern where you used to drink with your friends. And then you see them, your old neighbors, your friends, maybe even the father who sold you. But you can't speak to them. You are wearing the abutum, the shaved head or the brand of the slave. When your former friends see you coming, they don't run to help you. They look away in disgust. They step aside, not out of respect, but because you are now an untouchable, a walking ghost of financial ruin. You experience the ultimate psychological trauma, social death. You are physically alive, but legally, you are a piece of farm equipment. The Code of Hammurabi made this crystal clear. If a free citizen gets into a fight and knocks out the tooth of another free citizen, his own tooth is knocked out. That's the famous eye for an eye. But what if a free man gets angry and breaks your arm while you're carrying bricks? He doesn't go to jail. He doesn't get his arm broken. He simply pays your master a fine of half your market value. He doesn't apologize to you. He pays the man who owns you for damaging his property. Your pain has a literal price tag, and you don't even get to keep the money. Every day, your mind fractures a little more. You are exhausted, humiliated, and stripped of your voice. But as you lie in the dirt at night, your muscles screaming in agony, you cling to one tiny, shimmering sliver of hope. You cling to the second half of Law 117. The law stated that a debt slave only had to serve their master for 3 years. In the 4th year, they must be set free. 3 years, 36 months. It sounds like a beacon of light at the end of a dark tunnel. It sounds like Hammurabi was actually a merciful king. But this is the ancient world. And that 3-year limit wasn't a promise of freedom. It was a ticking clock. It was the exact reason why your master was about to turn your daily life into a brutal, fatal, non-stop death march. If you read the Code of Hammurabi today, Law 117 looks like a triumph of ancient human rights. It says that if a man sells his family to pay a debt, they shall work in the house of their buyer for 3 years, and in the 4th year, they shall be set free. 36 months. That's all you have to survive. But you aren't thinking like a wealthy Babylonian merchant. You need to look at the brutal calculus of ancient economics. Think about it. If you buy a permanent slave, a prisoner of war, that person is a long-term investment. You want them to live for 20 or 30 years. So, you feed them enough to survive. You give them a minimum amount of rest so their muscles don't snap. You protect your property. But a debt slave? A debt slave is a rental. You only have this human machine for 36 months. Every minute they sleep is a minute you are losing money. Every extra handful of grain you feed them cuts into your profit margin. You have absolutely zero financial incentive to keep them healthy for year 4, because in year 4, they legally belong to themselves again. So, the merchant drives you into the ground. Your rations are cut to the absolute bare minimum required to keep your heart beating. You're pushed to work 16, sometimes 18 hours a day in the blistering heat. If you collapse from heat stroke in month 34 and die in the mud, the master doesn't care. He has already squeezed 95% of your value out of your bones. This turns your sentence into a ticking clock of sheer terror. You aren't just working off a debt. You are in a literal race against your own physical decay. You watch other debt slaves wither away into living skeletons. You see them cough up blood from the dust of the quarries, their bodies giving out just weeks before their freedom date. Every morning you wake up in agony. You have to ask yourself, will my body make it to month 36, or will the debt outlive me? By some miracle of human endurance, you survive. The 36th month ends. The merchant officially removes your abatum. You walk out of the estate gates, a free citizen once again. You think the nightmare is over, but as you walk back into the city of Babylon, you realize the cruelest joke of all. Freedom isn't salvation. It's just the beginning of the trap. You did the impossible. You survived 36 months of unimaginable physical and psychological torture. The merchant legally releases you. Your abatum is shaved off, and your hair begins to grow back. You walk out of the estate gates, take a deep breath of the hot desert air, and step back into the world as a free citizen of Babylon. You survived the code of Hammurabi, but as you walk back to your family's farm, the intoxicating rush of freedom hits a brick wall of reality. What exactly are you returning to? The merchant didn't give you a severance package. You have no silver. You have no seeds to plant. You have no oxen to plow the fields. Your father is 3 years older, weaker, and still desperately poor. The harvest that failed 3 years ago left your family with nothing, and your 36 months of blood and sweat only paid off the past debt. It did absolutely nothing to secure your future. You realize the most devastating truth of the ancient world. Freedom without resources is just the freedom to starve. You are free to sleep in the dirt. You are free to watch your siblings cry from hunger. And within a few short months, as the winter approaches and the food runs out completely, your father will have to make a terrifying, familiar walk back to the merchant's estate to ask for another loan of barley. The 3-year rule wasn't designed to save you. It was designed to cycle the workforce. The merchant got 36 months of extreme labor out of you for the price of a few bags of grain. And now, he just waits for your family to go bankrupt again. You look at the mud brick walls of Babylon, and you realize you never actually left the prison. The entire system is a giant, inescapable wheel. You are just waiting for your turn to be sold again. The empire of Babylon collapsed into dust thousands of years ago. The Code of Hammurabi is now just a black stone pillar sitting in a museum in Paris. We look at it and shake our heads at how barbaric the ancient world used to be. We don't sell our children to pay for bad harvests anymore. But did the system of debt slavery really end? Or did it just get a modern upgrade? Today, no one brands you with a hot iron. Instead, they brand you with a credit score. You aren't forced to haul wet clay under a desert sun. You are forced to sit in a cubicle for 40 hours a week, staring at a glowing screen, trading the best years of your life to pay off student loans, medical bills, and a 30-year mortgage. The ancient Babylonian gave his master 3 years of his flesh. We give the modern banks 30 years of our time. The physical whips are gone, but the invisible chains of debt remain exactly where Hammurabi left them. So, I have to ask you, when you look at your own debt, do you feel like a free citizen? Or do you feel like you're just serving your time in a modern Babylon? Let me know your brutally honest thoughts down in the comments. If this video made you look at your credit card a little differently, hit that like button and subscribe to channel for more dark journeys into the psychology of history. Until next time, stay out of debt and stay free.